So a while back, a channel called Your Movie Sucks made a series of videos titled Childhood Trauma, where he and a bunch of other YouTubers talked about what scared them as a kid from different types of media. I always thought it was a fun idea, so I thought Halloween would be the perfect time to try it out. I mean, it technically doesn't count as jumping on the bandwagon whenever you're 2 years late, right? Keep in mind that most of the things I'll be talking about weren't intended to be scary, and for the most part it was just one moment or concept that really got to me. Because I didn't grow up watching horror movies or shows, these may seem a bit silly to the average person, but I'll be explaining along the way why they scared me. And for simplicity's sake, I'll be going in order by their release date. First up, we have Batman the Animated Series. This is arguably my favorite animated show of all time. It has good animation, good characters, good storylines.
It's very, very entertaining, action-packed, twisted, dirty, dark, edgy.
It basically encompasses everything I like about superhero media in general. This show, along with the rest of the DC animated universe, knew just how seriously to take themselves, without falling off the deep end and coming off as pretentious. It was able to strike that balance by implying consequence to the danger so you could feel the stakes, while still acknowledging the campier side of the source material. Although, to show you just how intense the show could get, the moment I'll be discussing is from the episode titled Bane. Towards the end of the episode, he faces off with him, and just when it looks like he's done for, he damages the device that controls Bane's strength.
You are beaten! Now I will break you! Huh? No! No! The Venom can't stop it! No! Help me! You can't do this to me! I am invincible! I have Bane!
I can almost guarantee you that anyone who's seen this episode could say that they were doing just fine right before his contacts flew out, in addition to how he trembles and screams being completely helpless to the situation. I mean, if Batman didn't pull out that tube, he definitely couldn't reach behind him and do it himself. And I especially love how the background randomly turns red to emphasize how much pain he's in. That just ties it all together. The show had a lot of moments like this, and looking back, I don't know why this one in particular got to me, considering I had seen these moments before. But again, that's what made the show so great. It's because of the scary imagery that helped me realize that stories are a lot more interesting when you can feel tension, something a lot of kids' shows and movies are lacking nowadays. Next on the list is a Goofy movie. The Goofy movie is a simple yet sweet story about Goofy trying to reconnect with his son Max on a road trip. At this point, I'm not breaking any new ground saying that it's an underrated classic. Heck, so many people have said it that I don't even think it counts as underrated anymore. But I am glad it's finally getting the recognition it deserves. I mean, it wasn't Disney's magnum opus of the 90s or anything, but I'm still glad they were able to make this straightforward and smaller scale type story. And even though Disney are still using their main ensemble on TV with shows like DuckTales and the Mickey Mouse shorts, it makes me wonder why Disney hasn't made an actual movie with them in so long.
It's that monkey again! And he's enraged!
So the movie opens up with Max having a dream about his crush Roxanne. It starts out the way you'd expect with the cheesy music and the romantic setting right up until this happens.
What's wrong?
As a kid, there was always something that made me feel uneasy about werewolf-type transformation sequences in media. I always thought about how gross and painful it would feel on top of it being out of my control. And yeah, I understand that this isn't the scariest depiction of that. In fact, I don't blame anyone for being desensitized to werewolves because of all of this. Even though I understand the purpose of the scene now and it's not nearly as scary as it used to be, the part where he screams is still pretty off-putting to me. Next, we have Toy Story 2. Toy Story 2 is easily my favorite out of the franchise. It introduces new characters and themes that build upon the original instead of just rehashing everything we've already seen. And the humor and emotional moments still hold up. It honestly surprises me that this is the lowest rated one out of the four, especially considering everything they went through to make this. There's a great video explaining what happened behind the scenes. Anyways, getting back on track. Andy's playing with his toys before he goes to summer camp and accidentally rips Woody's arm. He decides to leave him home instead of taking him like he was planning to, and that gives Woody an existential nightmare.
Hey, Woody! Did you miss me? Giddy up, giddy up, giddy up, giddy up! Ride up, cowboy! Oh, I forgot. You're broken. I don't want to play with you anymore.
No, Andy! No, Andy, no!
Gosh, it makes it so much worse that I have to edit through this frame by frame and see every tiny expression of terror that Woody makes, all while he's getting strangled to death by this toy Cronenberg creature. And how it ends with that shot that looks like it was taken straight from The Ring. Well, Toy Story 2 came out before The Ring, so I guess Ringu? It's probably just a coincidence, I don't know. And everything I've mentioned so far about the scene is ignoring the most important aspect of it, that being that it's a nightmarish depiction of abandonment and losing your sense of purpose. My favorite animated movies of all time are the kinds that can convey these adult themes to children in a way they can understand, and can benefit them in the long run so they know how to deal with these types of issues in real life, as opposed to the ones that just put in little to no effort because they know they can sell any stupid product to kids. Next, we have Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. This movie is very bizarre. Unlike the case with Disney's live-action remakes, where their animated classics can hold up after 5 decades, but their current remakes can't hold up after 1 year, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory justifies itself by having better production design, better, songs? No. Better characters? Longer runtime? Okay, the set design is really all this has over the original, but even though everything looks sleek and more organized, it lacks the genuine charm found in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. In the original, the characters were fun to watch whether they be bratty or sympathetic, but in this one, everyone just makes you feel uncomfortable. And I know Tim Burton intentionally directs his actors to be uncanny and weird, but that doesn't always make the performances themselves good. Wes Anderson kinda does the same thing, making his characters act quirky and nonchalant, but he's still able to get good acting from them in a way that stays consistent with his tone. Although, to be fair, this isn't his worst movie. I wouldn't even say it's his worst remake. I can tell there was a lot of effort put into this, much more than any of the Disney remakes, but the final product just came out awkward, clunky, and bloated. And speaking of bloated... we get to this film's version of the inventing room and Willy Wonka is like, "Watch this." All this machinery starts up and the children are just awestruck, like you can really tell these were their genuine first reactions. Then a piece of gum comes out and Willy Wonka explains that it's supposed to taste like a 3-course meal.
This gum is a full 3-course dinner all by itself.
And then the one that chews gum all the time takes it, despite Willy Wonka saying that it wasn't ready yet. And yeah, you know what's coming next.
What's happening to her nose?
Turning blue.
Your whole nose has gone purple.
What do you mean?
Violet, you're turning violet. What's happening?
Well, I told you I hadn't quite got it right, because it goes a little funny when it gets to the dessert. It's the blueberry pie that does it. I'm terribly sorry.
Mother? What's happening to me?
She's swelling up.
Like a blueberry.
In the original, it's kind of played off more as a joke, Willy Wonka's apathetic reaction to all this is hilarious. There's no ominous theatrical music. The fact that people are talking over it while it's happening also lifts the tension. Well, that and the fact that it looks significantly more fake.
You're blowing up!
I feel funny.
I'm not surprised.
What's happening?
You're blowing up like a balloon!
Like a blueberry.
Somebody do something! Call a doctor!
Stick her with a pin. She'll pop.
And obviously she doesn't grow as big or grotesque. But yeah. I don't know what else to say at this point that I haven't said already. This is definitely the last one on the list that has to do with body transformation, so I guess while I'm at it, I'll give a quick honorable mention to Wallace and Gromit and the Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Again, there's just nothing new I could say about why it scared me. The movie itself is great, and I highly recommend that one over this. Next up, we have X-Men First Class. This movie is really fun. It has cartoony but engaging action scenes, super corny dialogue.
Killing will not bring you peace. Peace was never an option.
And unlike the next film I'm going to talk about, it's pretty self-aware and embraces the absurdity in the story. I would even go as far as to say it feels like a live-action episode from the cartoon. And while I can't go as far as to say that it's perfect, it's still a very enjoyable movie that I can put on at any time. Though I have to admit, one of the more serious parts that still holds up in my opinion is the coin scene. In the beginning of the movie, they show a flashback of Magneto and his mother in a concentration camp, and it's here where the villain of the movie discovers his powers. He tests him to see if he can do it on command, but he seems to be having trouble, so they bring in his mother and threaten to kill her if he can't do it. He tries even harder, but it's too late. They face off again at the end of the movie, and he's able to get his helmet off so that Professor X can mind control him, and I'm pretty sure this is the scene that affected me the most from this list.
Sorry, Charles.
Eric, please! Be the better man! You haven't...
But I don't trust you.
Eric, there will be no turning back!
No!
Charles!
Don't do this, Eric!
If you're in there, I'd like you to know that I agree with every word you said. We are the future. But unfortunately, you killed my mother. This is what we're going to do.
No. Please, Eric, no.
I'm going to count to 3, and I'm going to move the coin. 1.
Please, Eric.
2. 3.
Just about everything in this scene really resonated with me. The look in Magneto's eyes as he's ready to release his bottled up anger slowly and painfully. The way Professor X willingly keeps Shaw at bay knowing that he's gonna feel everything that's gonna happen to him. And best of all, just the way it's shot and edited together. I think it's safe to say it's the best scene in the movie. And while I like the MCU well enough, not even they've done anything this intense with a PG-13 rating. Just like what I said about Batman the Animated Series, it's moments like this that elevate a decent story into being something truly memorable. And finally, we have Rise of the Planet of the Apes. The Planet of the Apes reboot franchise is pretty fun, but it's also really stupid. I mean, they're no worse than the average Marvel film. They have really cool special effects, but they also take themselves more seriously than they should. If it wasn't for Andy Serkis, I don't think these movies would be nearly as well received as they are. He always does an excellent job bringing personality to an otherwise mediocre film. But every now and then I just have to pause and ask myself, what is even going on? Although, viewing it as a 10-year-old kid way back in 2011, I do have to give it this. It definitely shifted my perspective on how to view movies from then on. Case in point being the ending of this movie. So basically, the formula that makes the apes smart is toxic to humans. And at some point in the middle of the movie, one of the neighbors gets infected. He's a jerk and you're basically expecting him to die eventually anyway. But after the ending, there's a mid-credits scene, revealing that not only is he gonna die soon, but because he's an airline pilot, he's going to unknowingly spread this virus across the world. So as the end credits roll, they show a graphic representing just how widespread this disease is getting. They never even have an on-screen death of someone dying from the virus. You see what happens afterward with someone's ear bleeding, but that wasn't what actually struck a chord with me. The real scary part is them showing just how quickly the sickness can catch on. And it was my first real taste of an unsatisfying ending to an otherwise well-made movie. One that's intentionally trying to leave you distraught. It's obviously not the very first movie to do this, and back then I didn't even know they were going to make a sequel to this. All I knew was that everyone was screwed, but it taught me that movies don't always need a happy ending in order to be effective. Again, there are far better movies that have done this. As I rewatched it recently, it was definitely more cheesy. Although at the end of the day, despite how corny and dumb these movies can get, I still enjoy them. But seriously, how did this happen?
Hi, this is me. You're probably wondering how I got here. Well, it's a long story.
So there you have it, basically everything that scared me as a kid. I'm glad this gave me the chance to revisit my favorite nostalgic movies and TV shows. It was pretty interesting to see how many of these held up and how many didn't. I crave human interaction, so comment below what scared you as a kid, and maybe I won't feel as ashamed of myself. Have a happy Halloween, and I'll see you whenever I think of a better outro.